On November 12, 2018, we said goodbye to a man who had become a legend to both comic book and movie fans alike. Stan Lee. Not only did we love seeing his many character creations, but we looked forward to seeing his iconic cameos in each new Marvel movie that came out. We'll talk about the history of his on-screen appearances and let you know which upcoming cameos you can still look forward to seeing. Before we begin, make sure to click on the subscribe button and turn on your notifications to get the latest videos from us here at ScreenRant. Now let's get started. Stan Lee is frequently hailed as the creator of some of our favorite superhero franchises, including Spider-Man, The Incredible Hulk, and the X-Men, just to name a few. He's been the poster child of the expansive Marvel Cinematic Universe, and there's no denying he was an incredibly talented person. But he didn't create these iconic characters all by himself. He shares the credit for many of his creations with his fellow writers and artists Steve Ditko and Jack Kirby. Comic book fans know these names well, but as far as the general public is concerned, Stan Lee is the pop culture icon closely associated with Marvel characters. Now, we aren't saying this to diminish his accomplishments. Quite the contrary. Stan Lee stands out, and always has, because in his heart of hearts, he's as big of a superhero nerd as the rest of us. As much as you love seeing those Stan Lee cameos in Marvel movies, we can almost guarantee he loved them even more. As a teenager, Stan Lee worked a number of odd jobs, including delivering sandwiches in order to support himself and his family. He always loved reading and writing, but his first professional gig was pretty grim. He started out writing obituaries, and his first publishing job was selling subscriptions to the New York Herald. Not exactly the most illustrious origin story, but as all of us Spider-Man fans know, people love to root for the everyman. During one interview, Stan Lee even admitted he once found his chosen career to be a bit embarrassing. He often thought about what it would be like to have a more prestigious career than comic book writer, but he would later remark, "Entertainment is one of the most important things in people's lives. Without it, they may go off the deep end. I feel that if you're able to entertain people, you're doing a good thing." We definitely aren't going to disagree with him there. The whole reason Stan Lee was given the opportunity to do cameos in the first place is because he's always had a special place in the hearts of fans. As his comic career grew, so did his passion for the medium. He would write editorial columns, and fans loved his engaging and informal writing style, as well as his obvious passion for the medium. According to Lee, he tried many different ways of signing off at the end of his column, but other writers were quick to copy him. Eventually, he settled on his signature Excelsior. He wanted to find something so unique nobody could copy him without looking obvious, and he definitely succeeded with this epic sign-off. You might think that Stan Lee's first cameos were in movies, but they predate those by decades. Back in the day, comic book artists would draw Lee into the comics as an extra bonus for fans. According to Lee himself, this wasn't his idea, but he admits he found his appearance humorous. The fans loved it too, and started sending Stan Lee even more fan mail as a result. Stan Lee was doing more than simply selling popular comics. He was selling himself and turning himself into the face of Marvel Comics. We often talk about the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which is a relatively new thing, but Stan Lee had been tying together plot lines, characters, and cultivating a print version of the Marvel Universe for decades. He had always envisioned his heroes being brought to television and film. Now he just had to wait for the rest of the world to catch up with his vision. But like most good superhero stories, this one involves some serious conflict. At one point, the comic industry was in a massive slump, and Marvel was facing bankruptcy. We know it's hard to imagine now, but it's true. In order to save itself, Marvel sold off the rights to some of its most popular characters: Spider-Man, the Hulk, the Fantastic Four, Daredevil, and the X-Men. It was a last-ditch effort to save the brand, and things certainly looked dire for Marvel. But Stan Lee refused to give up, and he proudly maintained his role as brand ambassador. He even launched into doing cameo appearances in all manner of Marvel media, from films to Netflix and television adaptations. He appeared in the Fox Spider-Man cartoon of the 1990s, and even appeared in some non-Marvel movies as well. Director Kevin Smith included a Stan Lee cameo in his 1995 movie Mallrats. Smith was a lifelong fan of Marvel Comics, and of Stan Lee specifically. He credits Lee with teaching him how to build a compelling universe and characters. When speaking of Stan Lee's Mallrats cameo, he said Lee made a lifelong fan's dream come true, and lent him the comic book credibility he still gets to spend today. Stan Lee's very first Marvel movie cameo was back in the 2000 movie X-Men, when he appeared on a crowded street as a hot dog vendor. At first, his appearance was simply a fun bit of insider info to comic fans, but soon, audiences grew to love and anticipate these appearances. And it probably won't surprise you to learn that Stan Lee loved these appearances too. One of his favorite cameos was in the 2007 movie Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer. During the cameo, we see Lee trying to get into the wedding of Reed Richards and Susan Storm, but the bouncer doesn't think he looks enough like Stan Lee. The real Stan Lee claimed he liked his more humorous cameos the best. There are so many great Marvel cameos to choose from that it can be hard to pick a favorite. So which one did Stan Lee himself like the best? His favorite cameo occurred during the movie Avengers: Age of Ultron. In the movie, we see Lee ask Thor for a sip of his Asgardian brew, but Thor replies it's too powerful. During the next scene, we see the God of Thunder was correct, and Lee is seen being carried out of the bar. During the second scene, we also got to see him drunkenly slurring his famous catchphrase, Excelsior. Lee claimed this one was his favorite because it's the only time he got to be in 2 scenes instead of just 1. He hoped it would do so well that maybe he would get 3 scenes in a movie at some point. Nope, we're not crying, we just have something in our eye. We know it's tempting to dwell on the Stan Lee cameos we'll never get to see, but for right now, let's celebrate the ones we can still look forward to. Prior to his passing, Lee filmed quite a few of them. If you haven't seen Venom yet, first of all, what are you waiting for? And secondly, Stan Lee of course makes a cameo in that movie. Stan Lee also has 2 more upcoming cameos we'll see in theaters during 2018, and they're in dramatically different movies. We're looking forward to seeing a lot of iconic characters in Wreck-It Ralph 2: Ralph Breaks the Internet when it hits theaters in November 2018. While Vanellope von Schweetz is running from stormtroopers, she accidentally bumps into Stan Lee. This appearance is pretty quick, so don't blink or you'll miss it. Then we have the movie Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse hitting theaters in December 2018. We'll see Lee in a bit of a longer cameo this time, delivering a few lines of dialogue to Miles Morales. The Marvel Cinematic Universe, which Stan Lee had dreamed about for so long, has a lot of moving parts. This means its movies need to be planned out far in advance in order to keep everything making sense. According to director Joe Russo, Stan Lee wasn't a fan of flying, so getting him to show up on set could be a bit of a problem. In order to combat this, they would often shoot multiple Stan Lee cameos all at once. This just made the most sense and was a bit easier on Stan Lee. It also means that we have some additional cameos we can look forward to, so don't be surprised if you see Stan Lee popping up in some 2019 movies. Previously, Joe Russo confirmed Lee would be appearing in the 4th Avengers film, and that his scene had already been shot. While we do have new Stan Lee appearances to look forward to, there is one we'll sadly never get to see. Guardians of the Galaxy was a great movie with no shortage of risque comedy and moments. Of course, there was a cameo by Stan Lee included in that film. While Rocket Raccoon was surveying his surroundings, he glanced at Lee flirting with a much younger woman. But that wasn't the original cameo intended to go into the film. Director James Gunn confessed he had wanted to film a different cameo featuring Lee. He wanted Lee to show up during the scene in which the Guardians visit the Collector and have Lee displayed in one of the exhibits. Then, when Groot turned to look at the exhibit, Stan Lee would flip him the bird. Apparently, Disney refused to sign off on the scene, so Gunn was forced to change it. Guardians of the Galaxy fans might be a bit confused by this ruling, since the movie features a scene where Chris Pratt's character Peter Quill flips off the Nova Corps. But apparently, that was deemed permissible because Quill is a fictional character. Because Stan Lee was just playing himself, he was expected to behave a little bit better. We suppose that's the price you have to pay when you're considered to be the face of Marvel Comics. But there is one popular idea which theorizes that Stan Lee is indeed playing a character, and it's the same person each time we see him on screen. This theory not only states that Stan Lee is playing a singular character throughout all of his different appearances, but that it's a character he himself created. Some believe he's playing the role of Uatu, better known as the Watcher. If you're not a comic book fan, don't worry, we'll fill you in. This character is one of the oldest beings in the Marvel Universe and was created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby back in the 1960s. As you might have guessed based on the name, the Watchers, well, watch. You probably could have figured that one out on your own. He observes the universe and records all events which happen. and his area of expertise just so happens to be the planet Earth. Some fans believe Stan Lee is just disguising himself as a human in order to get a more up-close look at what is going on. We have to admit that this would explain why Stan Lee always seems to end up near historically important events and surrounded by superheroes. If this is true, it would mean that Stan Lee is an even bigger part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe than we once thought. We can't say for sure if this theory is true or not, but it's certainly fun to think about. And we aren't saying that a Stan Lee cameo makes a movie a success, but he may have hinted as much. The 2015 Fantastic Four movie was a huge flop, and Lee was asked for his opinion on the subject. He replied, "Well, it was probably because I didn't have a cameo in it, and they didn't discuss the story with me." And surprisingly, there may be some truth to this. Movies featuring a Stan Lee cameo tend to be more popular than those without him. Movies with cameos have an average Rotten Tomatoes score of 73%, but without him, scores plummet to 36%. However, correlation doesn't always equal causation. The movies with Stan Lee cameos tend to be produced by Marvel Studios, and it's clear this company knows what they're doing. Plus, having someone who created the characters provide insight and guidance during the filming process can't hurt either. So, while we love these moments starring Stan Lee, we don't think they are solely what makes these movies great. There's no doubt that Stan Lee was proud of his contributions to Marvel, and about the legacy he leaves behind. His last public appearance was at the Los Angeles premiere of Avengers: Infinity War, where he thanked fans for spending years coming to see his cameos in Marvel movies. We know there are tons of them to choose from, but what has been your favorite Stan Lee cameo? Be sure to tell us which one you loved the most in the comment section below, and then click on that subscribe button for more videos from us here at ScreenRant. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.